Hello and welcome to the Facing Woodland 2023 election special. I am your host, Elijah Johnson, and I'm standing this time. I'm also alone. That's okay. This isn't necessarily where I'm going to sit down with anyone in particular and talk about some issues. I'm just going to have interpreted some results, put them in a place, and give you, the humble viewer, quick little updates on stuff happening in town. I'm not, again, trying to be biased here, but we're going to go through the election results, we're going to go through the city council updates, and we're going to touch on what's happening on some of the things that we've been voting on and talking on pretty much all year. So, let's just get into it. First things first.
Free speech advocate is on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
So here's how I kind of want to do it, because a lot of things have happened really fast and all at once. What I mean is we had our election results. Some of those were contentious. Votes came in. Then we immediately hopped into a city council hearings. I took notes on that. A lot of people had opinions, including the mayor-elect, new mayor, good guy, just Todd Deinhardt, all around genuinely nice person. So how do we talk about this, right? Do I just give you the numbers in a boring fashion, or do I try to make a story out of it that's easier to digest? I think that's what I'm going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by going through the results. As we go through those results, we're going to touch base on who won and what they've done since the election, or what their role was in the city council meetings.
Free speech advocate is on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
City of Woodland, what are our results? Well, you all know Todd Deinhardt won. If you didn't know Todd Deinhardt won, Todd Deinhardt won. What I think is really telling, I'm going to put it on a pie chart here, is how big he won by. Todd Deinhardt got, as of this evidence, 70% of the vote, 69.62. This is more or less 70%. I can round up to that. I feel good about that. What I want to say is that that's an outcry for change. I'm not here to demonize Mayor Finn. That does come later. But it's an outcry for change. It's the people of Woodland saying they want to see new leadership. They want to see new change. So, going back to our city council hearing, what was one of the first things after this election that the old mayor decided to do? What did Mayor Finn decide to do at a city council meeting? Well, I'll tell you what he did. He tried to pass real quickly a bailout, a golden parachute, a sweetheart deal for everyone he appointed. Now, I don't know if Travis Goddard should be terminated, but functionally, that's not a question for me to ask. I have no reason to believe it. Every time I've seen him, he seems nice. Everything he's interacted with, he's done well. I don't have an interaction with Travis Goddard that I would think negatively about. You might. You're entitled to that belief. But for Mayor Finn to draft, see if I can put it here on the screen, for Mayor Finn to draft additional qualifications and extended severance packages for the people he appointed, it shows a deliberate desire to undermine or hamstring the incoming people. If the new city council and the new mayor think that some of these people needed to be looked at, well, now they've made that job a lot more difficult. If they believe that a genuine change may be warranted for a reason they ran on, the old regime has made that more difficult. It's a very petty way to legislate. But let's talk about it from a sales perspective. If you've met me around town, you know that my job is sales. So here's what I see when I see the city council's extension and golden parachutes for their appointees. I see a lack of confidence. I don't think that Jim Kelly is a bad police chief, but it says a lot about what the city council thinks of his performance when they go, we have to give this man extensions and we have to make it harder to terminate him, because if anyone other than us looks at his performance, they'll decide to do it. Tracy Coleman has done tremendous work for this city. I have no reason to think she should be looked at critically. But this extension would make me look at her critically because it shows a lack of faith in the work she's already done. Now, Todd Deinhardt did take to Facebook to draft a pretty solid response, admittedly. So one of the first questions he brought in, there's a lot here. I'll put it on the screen. I don't think that you have to read all of it, but I applaud him for writing it, and I did. So we're going to cover some highlights. Still on the mayoral election before we head out, Todd Deinhardt wrote, the agenda was 256 pages. Did the mayor and all 7 city councilmen read all of those pages? There's no way to know. It is way too much. I can say that if you're skimming, there's a lot of legalese you can sort of get through to get to the points. I think it's a fair question to ask, but it's telling of the density. Why did it need to be so big? It's because the outgoing city councilman and the outgoing mayor had a lot of last-minute business they wanted to get into. Because even though the town voted overwhelmingly for change, the city council didn't really agree. Which brings us to
Free speech advocate is on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
I'll put this on the screen. This is a close race. This is 50.3% to 49.3%. A 1% change, about 8 votes. I have to say, I don't feel bad for either one of these candidates as far as who represents me going forward. I think Dowdy's done a great job. And when we're going to get to her performance on the city council, hopefully that'll resonate with you. I think change is good. I don't know a lot about Mr. Belle Isle. Maybe I missed his debate. That can be on me. Maybe I missed his interviews. That can be on me. What I do know is he seems like a reasonable, nice guy. He's done a little bit of work with the PTSA, which I do work with as well. So I don't think that he's bad for our community or a poor representative. And I think that you can really see in the vote turnout that change alone almost drove the election for some people. So I really, really do respect him for coming out. If you end up watching this, Keith, thank you for running an election. And while you didn't get my vote this time, because I was able to speak more with Miss Dowdy than with you, and that just is due to how I was able to intake information, I didn't have anything negative about you to feel. So I don't want you to think that, like, people don't like you. Just, you can't win every election. But on to Miss Dowdy. So what did Miss Dowdy think of the mayor's ridiculous cronyism? She actually tried to stop it. At the city council meeting, Melissa Dowdy said that it was too long to extend these out for. She was worried about the cost incurred to the city. And when it came up for a vote, she voted no. There was another thing that came up at the city council hearing, and we'll bring up Miss Dowdy as that as well. It was a re-signing of Minall. Now, I'm new to Woodland. For those of you that have lived here longer, your opinions on Minall are a lot stronger than mine. I don't want to say that your voice doesn't matter. I don't want to say that you don't matter. I just want you to understand that I have a lighter opinion on this. I'm definitely trying to see what the town feels. Town's very skeptical. That's understandable. On the Minall vote, the city council tried to extend the contract out for another 3 years. Melissa Dowdy tried to stop that. She voted against it. She agreed that we did need to sign some contract, but she was trying to limit it to 1 year so at least it could come up for review in a timely fashion. Going back to our illustrious mayor, what did he say? Well, about those cronyistic payouts, he said employee contracts should not have been modified less than 45 days prior to a change in leadership. I feel that that makes a lot of sense. He said some more words. Don't really need to read them. One of the things of note that he brought up that I noticed, that if you watched that hearing, you noticed, is that they said that the reason they put those policies in, these golden parachutes, I'm being generous with that word. It's not tremendous, but it's the same principle. The reason they said they should vote for it is because they consulted with experts, which is a fun sentence, the experts they consulted with were the people whose contracts they were amending. So even if they did consult with experts, our city council is so dunderheaded, they would engage willingly in a chicken and hen house situation. Well, no, not all of them. Again, Ms. Dowdy tried to stop it. We'll get into some of the other city council actions in a bit. The 3-year Minol extension. I think it's great to come back into that as we bounce around. Honestly, Deinhardt agrees with Ms. Dowdy. He agrees with a lot of the town. It shouldn't have been extended. He's got in his post, I'll put it right up here, a great breakdown of some of those numbers, of why those costs matter, and why you should care about them. We elected him because he cares about numbers. I voted for him for that passion that he has for the town and his love of numbers. So I'm excited to watch him really rake some of these accounts over the coals, and dig into what's best for us on just a financial extension.
Free speech advocate is on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
Again, I will put that pie chart here on the screen. Aaron, you were on the show. You sat down. You were willing to talk to the people. You said a lot that you want to listen to the people. I like that. It does sound nice. You're a good guy. When it came time to vote, you tended to vote more in line with an existing power structure than you did with what people around town might have been telling you. But, and this is true, I don't know. I don't know what your inbox looks like. I know what we talked about. I don't know what everyone tells you when I'm not around. I don't really want to sass you. And to Alderman's credit, on Minol, he tried to append this. He tried to break it down and to stop it from extending because he also is skeptical of it. He's not a bad guy, just didn't win. I don't know a whole lot about Douglas Friedmark Sr. I didn't see anything other than some signs around town, but I hope he does a good job. I hope he's going to really represent the city. I'd like to have known more about his opinions. And for what it's worth, I didn't vote for him because I'm voting based on who I know more about and what I like on their position. I don't know anything about him. I don't know anything about his position. On the extension, Aaron Alderman was for those contract amendments, soundly on a they've earned it capacity, which, again, is fine. Talked about this earlier. Why are we waiting so long? They've earned it. Shouldn't it be done at the beginning of the... You see what I'm saying, right? Like, you've earned it. Here's your reward. Not, oh, crap, I lost my job. Here's your bailout. Because that is how it looks, even if that's not the case.
Free speech advocate is on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
I'll put that here. Gabe Houston beat Holland by a measure of 24 votes, which is a swing of 13. If 13 people had voted differently, Deanna Holland would keep her seat. It's just tight. I just want to say that if you ever feel like your voice doesn't matter or your vote doesn't matter, it absolutely does. You should get out there and vote. We're coming under razor numbers here in these local elections. And as I talk more about elections nationally in 24, it's exciting to remember that while it might not feel like you have a lot of impact on the big stuff, here in town, your voice really carries. And that involvement really gets things moving. So again, it's just a handful of votes splitting the difference, really threading the needle here. Deanna Holland, I've met her a couple times off of this project. She seems like a nice lady. I've seen her in a lot of hearings. I don't really have personal beef with her. Gabe Houston, I made a post, wherever it is. He came on, he talked. And to his credit, this is his page and submission in the elector handbook. So I don't know how people are supposed to know to vote for him outside of facing Woodland. So I'm going to toot my horn and I'm going to say, you know what? I think I moved a needle on that one. I feel good. But on our issues, Deanna Holland, where is she? What did she do with the contract extension? She voted for, didn't even try to stop it. What did she do on the Minol extension? She voted for, didn't even try to stop it. I want to like Deanna, but when you see her, people just kind of falling in line with an overall narrative like this, when the town is sort of saying we feel that you should or shouldn't be taking these positions overwhelmingly, you should probably be doing more to listen to the town.
Free speech advocate, it's on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
Monty Smith tried to amend mine all to a year and voted no for the contract amendments for the appointees, the golden parachutes. I think that Monty Smith, even though he ran unopposed, is doing a good job up there. He's trying to listen to the people. He's torn when he's getting conflicting viewpoints, but he's doing his best to pay attention to, what might be in the best interest of the city and what the people are actually telling him. So while Monty ran unopposed, Mr. Smith, if you end up watching this, I don't feel bad. I think that it's cool that you're up there, and it seems like you genuinely care, and I got faith that you're going to do a good job if what I've seen is indicative of what you're going to keep doing. That leads us to our last councilman position, Mr. Terry Hall. I want to be polite. I do. So I want to be very clear. The issues I have with Terry Hall don't necessarily stem from me thinking that he's like a bad guy. It stems from the way that his thought process in regards to his position works relative to the marijuana amendment. And before we get into that, let's bring up this Deinhardt post, number 6. The 20 after 4 has been a big issue in town. A lot of people seem to be for it. Some people seem to be against it. Some of those people are on city council. The problem that Todd Deinhardt had is that workshop should have been open to public comment. Because they're always open to public comment, because that's what they're for. That's what the workshops are for. But public was not allowed to issue comments on the workshop. And Todd Deinhardt said, the more we communicate with one another, ask questions, and work together, the stronger we make our community. And I think that's extremely romantic. But in the issue of Terry Hall, I think it'll fall on deaf ears. Terry Hall, on the October 19th workshop for marijuana, said, it's not my job to listen to what the people want. It's my job to take your hand and tell you what's best. And that's what he feels his responsibility is as a city councilman. He doesn't think his job is to represent the people, even though that's outlined in the founding doctrine of the United States of America. So, find that to be interesting. But moreover, it shows a deliberate unwillingness to engage with opposition. If you don't agree with Terry Hall, he'll just ignore you and do what he wants anyway. After all, he doesn't represent you. If you send him emails or phone calls or catch him at church and say, hey, Terry, what do you think about this or that? I have an opinion. He doesn't care. Unless you agree with him, then he does care.
Free speech advocate, it's on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
I want to say I don't smoke weed. I know, dressed like this, I'm obviously not of sound mind, but I don't smoke weed. I don't do the ganja. I don't even drink. My beef with the town and the way we're handling marijuana comes squarely from the moral hypocrisy that you would have to apply any level of vilification to marijuana when you don't to alcohol. Woodland has had a moratorium or some kind of ban on pot for a decade or so now, give or take. But they've never banned alcohol. You could be a dry sound, happens, but you're not. When I hear council people like Terry Hall, or like anybody who's willing to stand up and say, I don't like that my kids have to see it. Well, in order to get to the pot shop, you have to drive past a liquor store. You don't seem to have a problem with that. In order to go grocery shopping, you have to walk past the alcohol section. You don't have a problem with that. In order to buy a cup of coffee, you have to be right next door to hard liquor, and you don't have a problem with that. If you want to take your kids to Luckman's, you're walking right next to a liquor store. So you clearly don't have a problem with your kids seeing a negative influence. I know it's not about keeping families safe, because when Councilman Aaron Alderman stood up, well, he was sitting down, when he took time and said, alcohol is what drove my family to a substance problem. You don't care about protecting his family or families like his and banning the substance that's ruined them. You care about banning weed because what? You don't like it? And I hear all the excuses. I watched Mayor Will Finn sit up on a podium in front of the whole town that I videotaped and say,
and the moratorium being lifted, if I had a vote, I would be no. And I've been open about that. I live in a world of law enforcement, as my opponent has brought up. 2022, 61% of fatality collisions that occurred on a state route or across the states on any roadway was due to an impaired driver. I live in a different world. I see a different version of what impairment can do. I do not support bringing this into our community, and I do not support having it in the faces of our children. Just the other day, there was a child at school, one of our middle schoolers, came into school high on marijuana. There's accessibility issues that are there for me as well. I don't want that in the face of our children. If I had a vote, it would be no, but I don't get a vote. It comes down to city council.
But when 80% of those deaths are alcohol related, he doesn't want to ban alcohol. Nobody did. He's been mayor for 8 years. My problem comes with the moral inconsistency that you have. Substances are a problem, well, as long as it's marijuana. I care about I care about deaths in cars, well, as long as they're marijuana related. Oh, I don't want my kids to see it as long as it's pot. But if some yokel wants to chug a fifth of vodka in the Safeway parking lot, well, that's just all right by you, right? That's okay. If alcohol tears a family apart, causes a kid to spiral into hardline substances, that's fine. You don't have a problem with that. When a drunk driver slams into a family of 4 on the I-5, you don't care, really. That's not a problem for you. But when it's weed, oh, stop the presses. Went off on a tangent there. But I do want to say, I think it's important to compare Terry Hall to J.J. Burke. Both older fellas, both been in the council a long time. And when it came to extending out some of these, again, we're being polite here, but golden parachutes, J.J. Burke at least tried to push it to next year. He wanted to table the conversation so that he could have it after everyone came back with the new representatives. Because J.J. Burke knew that the people of Woodland had spoken and that new people were coming in. And he didn't want to hamstring them with this kind of slow down, petty legislation. If they truly had earned it, as Councilman Alderman said, they'd be just as worthy in January if they truly had earned it. If it wasn't a bailout, then next year they could prove it. If they really were good for the city and this wasn't just giving a payout to your friends, in January, they'd still get it. He asked for a 2-month window. And Terry Hall shut him down because Terry Hall doesn't care what the people of Woodland think. And if you think I'm putting words in his mouth, here's his words in his mouth.
Free speech advocate, it's on my mind, I'm saying it. I'm about to buy another gun and ain't nobody taking it.
So where does that leave us? Going forward, let's bring the energy back up. Last one, if there was a big race running around town, you saw it, I saw it. It was the school board smackdown of the century. It was Katie Nichols versus Sarah Stewart. Here's the pie chart. Sarah won in a blowout. I don't know a whole lot about this. Here's what I can tell you. I'm with the PTSA. I don't know if the organization's powerful, but I do know that the one thing we do is work with kids and principals and students a lot. When I go to those meetings, I see a lot of PTSA faces, sure, some parents occasionally, teachers and principals. Do you know whose face I've never seen once? Katie Nichols. For someone so passionate about our school, she isn't taking time to raise those concerns. When I went to the listening board hearing, she brought up vaguely curriculum. I invited her to sit down, talk about Facing Woodland, and she didn't try, never responded, didn't get back to me. Neither did Deanna Holland, and I'm not lumping them together outside of this context, but they did both say they were going to schedule something, and then both of them didn't. Take that for what that's worth. People get busy. I'm not trying to hold it against them. But what is important is that you need to formulate why you should be voted for. And Katie Nichols had a really hard time doing that because I couldn't seem to find a place where she had really been able to elucidate her ideas outside of the occasional texty Facebook post. I don't trust those because those could be written by anybody. But much like Gabe Houston from before, this is also her voters pamphlet set up. And it's also blank. So not a good look. I wanted to vote for Katie Nichols. I love change. I got nothing against Sarah, but new voices are fun to get excited for. And I didn't really feel a lot of reason to get excited for her. But again, I'm new to Woodland. Maybe I don't know the whole story. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Now, am I calling these elections? Am I saying these are definitive? Not exactly. Finalized results are still coming, but these are ballots returned by day. So here's a little chart here. It feels like we're not going to get a big drop of ballots that are going to switch things up. That's possible. I'd be suspicious if it happened. I wouldn't have a reason to not be suspicious. It would just be out of character, and anomalies are worth being suspicious about. So I feel like this is safe to call these elections. If you don't want to, if you think, hey, you never know, feel free to wait for them to be certified. These are unofficial results we're going through. But I figure given the trickling of ballots in and the amount of them that's been cast, it feels like a good way to just sort of call it. Again, I could be wrong. Things can change. I don't know. Just it's the way it looks here. That's the end of this episode of Facing Woodland. Thank you for watching my 2023 election special. Stay tuned for 2024. We're going to enter into Project by a Congressman. That'll be fun. I don't know if we can do it, but let's try to figure that out. Oh, and I sat down with the local, for lack of a better word, we'll call him archivist. And I'm putting together a video for everything you need to know about the Woodland Pool. See you next time.